Hey guys, KoBaC here with another Halo Mattel action figure review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 6-inch Series 1 Elite Zealot. Now, I just wanted to go ahead and show he does not come with the plasma caster. The plasma caster comes with Spartan Locke, who's also available in the series. But I wanted to show that he can actually hold some different weapons because the Elite's hands are obviously very different than the human's hands. So I wanted to show that to start out with. What he does actually come with is a energy sword. Now this energy sword is pretty large. I mean, if you just put it up against the figure, I mean, it's like, wow, that's really big. And then to compare it to the McFarlane sword from Halo 5, this was from Series 2 with the blue Spartan Helljumper. Honestly, I don't really care for McFarlane's one. The hilt looks nicer, the handle of the blade, but I don't actually like the sword. It's not as long, for one, and I mean the energy sword was designed for the elites. It wasn't designed for humans to run around in multiplayer holding. It was designed for the elites to use from the Covenant, and the sword doesn't really seem that big. And the thing is that McFarlane's scale is 5.5 inches, so it's literally a ½ inch shorter than the than the Mattel figures, and yet the swords are hugely different. Now, the Mattel version does not have any painting. It's just transparent plastic, and then it has these 2 points where it actually holds it together and makes it stronger. It's up to you if you want to keep that. It might be worth maybe just cutting those out and then just having it without that, but it does add a little bit more stability and strength to the blade so it doesn't get broken. That's the only accessory for him that he comes with. It would have been really sweet if he would have came with another weapon, especially because he's the only figure in Series 1 that only comes with one weapon. So all the rest come with 2. So why not him as well? I don't understand. Especially because they made the plasma pistol and they made the needler for the red Helios Skrill. So it's like, it's not like you didn't want to make more Covenant weapons. And you made the plasma caster. And you made the carbine for the elite officer with the ghost. So it's like, well, what the heck? But it would have been really sweet if it would have come with like a deactivated sword hilt. But whatever. It does have a peg hole, but I'm never going to put an activated energy sword attached to any of my figures because that's just absolutely ridiculous. But it's there. He also comes with the hind legs that help build the Alpha Crawler. Every figure in Mattel Series 1, except for the Elite Officer with the Ghost, come with parts to build the Alpha Crawler. So that's really sweet that we're going to finally get an Alpha Crawler. And I mean, there's only 6 figures in this set, so it's not that many to try to get. I mean, it could be like 8, but 6 is okay. So you can get all the parts. So now let's go ahead and show the energy sword actually in the Elite's hand and not just pretend that it is there. Take that out for now. Energy sword fits pretty snugly. I mean, sometimes I've noticed that the energy sword, it's a little heavy for some of these figures. So that is a concern, I guess maybe down the road, is that the joints might wear out because of the energy sword. But see, and then his wrist being kind of flippity floppity. But I mean, there he is holding the energy sword, so he can hold it very well. It is a little loose only because of his wrist being loose. I mean, that's not the best, and it's probably more so because I've been fighting with him to get him to hold the plasma caster because he didn't really want to do that, but I sort of made him, you know, because I'm his master and I can do that. So let's go ahead and get into the paint job of the figure. So all Mattel figures are pretty bland compared to what we're used to with McFarlane. But McFarlane's not making figures anymore, so we better either like it or just only keep collecting what's left of the McFarlane stuff. But some of the figures, like Master Chief, I think, even though he's pretty clean looking, I think is really nice. But the red Helios Skrill is awesome. I think Linda's pretty cool, and I like the Elite Zealots. The armor is kind of plain, but in the parts where there is work, it's very nice. So like back here, you've got some of this yellow like lights on his back. You also have a couple of other places where there's lights, and on the helmet there's like a little bit of a glow around the lights. What's really probably the best, I think, is actually his face, because his head has just different shading around the eyes. The mouth is nicely painted. The teeth are nicely painted, even though it's kind of tight in there. And usually the teeth are like the thing where people, when they're painting, just cannot control themselves and they just start painting everything. So I'm really glad that the teeth are actually really nice, so that when you do take the helmet off, you know, there you go. All of the armor on the Elite is removable. I don't really know when you would want to take the armor off of any of the Elites, because nobody wants to see him naked. But I mean, you have that ability if you feel so inclined. With the armor, there are a couple of areas of concern. First being my helmet. When I opened them out of the packaging, the helmet was bent. You can kind of see a little bit of like a whoop off to the side. And I don't really like that. But the plastic is very squishy. So there's the pros and the cons on that. So if it does get messed up, and you can see, I mean, I can just squeeze this thing all day. You can warm it up with a blow dryer or some other heat source, and then stick it in some cold water, and do that maybe a couple of times to be able to get it to where you need it to be. So you'd have that. The other thing that's kind of annoying, that's not really so much Mattel's fault, are these stupid wrist armor pieces. Now, I thought with the Elite Officer, those wrist armor pieces were annoying, and I didn't talk about that. They kept falling off in between, like when I was working with it, but I should have. But on this one, it's even worse because the armor sticks out above the wrist. Normally, the armor kind of stays back here, but with it sticking out, and you trying to put like energy swords or other things in his hands, they're just gonna just fall over. So if I were you, I would consider super gluing those in place, because it's kind of frustrating when they keep falling off. And I know part of the gimmick is that these figures all have removable armor. Even the Spartans, every armor piece is removable, so that you can customize, so that you and they detail the bodies underneath. So it's not like they're just like plain flat plastic. I mean, there's actually like a suit underneath. So that's a nice added detail that we didn't have before. When McFarlane had pieces of armor that could be interchanged, you would pull it out and there's just these big peg holes and this empty gap, and you're like, ah, that looks terrible, cover that stuff up. You could actually take the armor off all of these figures, and you could actually display them without the armor, and then maybe buy another one with the armor on and display that, and like, this is the differences. I mean, that's a nice difference to have, you know? So, articulation for the figure. Take the helmet off so we can see. The head has articulation. At the neck, it has a place here where the head is, but it doesn't move. But it does have a very good range of motion for the neck, which is great. Waist articulation isn't so great on this particular Elite because of the armor here on the back. His armor that's connected like on his spine, it goes up into where the chest armor is. So really it's supposed to more line up, but if you don't, I mean, if you keep it where it's not, he can move pretty freely. But when I first opened him and I kind of locked it in place like that, then he can't move because he's got the armor there. So I'd kind of just put it underneath, and then he can move. Now, for the shoulders, he can raise his arms pretty high, extend his arm all the way out, can lower it. I wish it could come down a little bit more, but maybe that's just how their physiology is. It does bend at the elbow. It rotates at the forearm, but I would be careful because it doesn't rotate great. When you try to rotate the forearm, it starts to run into the plastic right here, if you can see. And what it does is it causes a lot of tension on the forearm, and where it starts to split is the other side. So if I'm twisting it this way, it starts to create a seam here worse. So I wouldn't try to like rotate these 360 because I don't want to cause damage to the forearms. The hands also rotate 360, can bend at the wrist. Legs, that's as far forward as that leg's going to go. That's as far back as it's going to go. Whatever it is, Elites never seem to have a lot of articulation from McFarlane and apparently now from Mattel. However, it does rotate 360 at the hip. So you can, even though you can't move the leg forward a whole lot, you can rotate it and still get him into some cool poses. Bends at the knee, but not a very big range of motion. And then you also have foot articulation, but most of the time, because of the way the Elite's boots are, their feet aren't moving a whole lot. So it's there, but you can't really use it, you know what I mean? So pretty standard articulation for an Elite of what I would consider to be standard compared to McFarlane. You know, It might just be because of the way that the figure is modeled after the characters in the game, and just maybe the way that they are just doesn't really work well for toys. Okay, so size comparison time. Here is the SH Figure Arts Mario, Figma Link, Halo 5 Series 1 Blue Athlon from McFarlane Toys. So just as a quick side note here, I would say that even if you're like, the rest of the Mattel figures are completely out of scale with McFarlane figures, I would say that the Elite is actually in fantastic scale with the Halo 5 Spartans from McFarlane. So just as a personal thing, if you weren't going to pick up anybody else, you might want to get this guy even still, because for one, Halo 5 from McFarlane had no Covenant whatsoever. So you could get this guy and you could at least have something. And here he is compared to the Series 1 Halo Mattel Master Chief. So the Spartans and the Elites are incredibly close in scale. Personally, I would have really liked the Elites to be bigger, because to me the Elites are at least a head taller than the Spartans, at least. And the Spartans are big guys, but the Elites are even bigger. Now, it's a good thing that when you look at the sculpt, you're like, wow, the Elite looks big, he looks bulky, he looks tough, that's great. Back in Halo 3, when we were getting Elites from McFarlane, they were kind of really scrawny and wimpy looking, which was, I don't understand why. That was they were still big. They're not as big now. I mean, Bungie and then 343 have redesigned the Elite so many stinking times at this point. I mean, goodness. But there he is anyway, so you can at least see the scale. And I know that I've gotten a lot of requests to maybe do a size comparison with the Elite Zealot compared to the Halo 4 Elites, but I don't have any of those, so I can't. And just to go ahead and show it, he can hold the Needler and the Plasma Pistol that come also in Series 1. So, in conclusion, I really like the figure. I'm glad to have more Elites in my collection. I'm really hoping that Mattel continues to make Covenant, continues to make maybe more Promethean things, continues hopefully to start making just generic humans like Marines, ODST, others, just make a bigger series. Now granted, this was a Build-A-Figure series. I would rather lose the Build-A-Figure, even though I really like it, and gain more figures in the series, just because, I think of, okay, now that Mattel is starting over, basically, from what McFarlane was doing, we have nothing. The level of the playing field is completely starting over. So we've really only got 7 figures and a Ghost. Now there's also going to be a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Red Helios grill with a little bit different variation compared to the one that we're already getting in this series. So you can go ahead and count 8 figures. That's it. Oh, well, 9 if you count the crawler. So 9 figures. So, and one of them is an exclusive. So it really knocks it back down to 8. 8's great. 8 is a nice way to start, but I'm just saying, don't stop. Don't start cutting back like McFarlane did for like their Series 2 and only do 4 guys, and 2 of them are the same character, and both the others were repaints. Make sure that you keep doing more and keep doing fresh stuff, because that'll be really cool. So, if you're interested in picking up this figure, I've got a link in the description for you to go buy one. I like it. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4 out of 5. The reason I'm not going to give it a 5 is because there's another thing I forgot to mention. I do not like his wrists. And it's not really so much the wrist as much the forearm right before the wrists. Like on our arms, it's straight. But for whatever reason, on this duty head, he's got these bent wrists. You see how it kind of like goes like, whoop. It's like, why does it have to raise like that? Maybe that's how the Elite forearms are. I haven't checked in the pictures. But if you notice, what it does is it make his hands kind of bent. Rather than being straight, he's like this, and I don't really care for that. I'm just trying to think of like, well, if you try to get him to hold the plasma caster, or I try to get him to hold a battle rifle, or I try to get him to hold other things, he's just always going to look like he's, I don't know, getting up. Like I could see his wrists being like that for doing push-ups, but which it wouldn't even really be effective, but not so much for just standing there holding a gun. So that's a flaw that I wish Mattel would have just corrected themselves. I don't know if they were even allowed to. I don't know what the relationship is yet. Another thing to not forget real quick is that he does have a weapon peg hole on the right and on the left thigh, but he does not have one on the back. unlike the Elite Officer, who has one on the back so that he can put the carbine. So I don't really know why there isn't one on the back. Perhaps mine's a defect, or perhaps they just figured, well, he's getting an energy sword and he's not going to want that. So, well, whatever. Anyway, like I said, 4 out of 5. Really cool figure. Glad to get him. I would buy him if you're still a Halo 5 or all the way back to Halo 3 purist with McFarlane. I would still get this just because it's nice to have a different Covenant for a change. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, commenting, subscribing, supporting this channel through all the different ways that you do. It means a lot to me, and it helps this channel to continue and for these reviews to continue. So anyway, guys, I'll talk to you all later, and thanks for watching.